Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another edition of What's on My Desk. Today I want to talk to you about Richard Mille. I'm not going to get into details and the nuts and bolts of every watch as usual. I'm just going to show you the different types of Richard Milles that are out there, talk about the brand a little bit, and show you some of the pieces that are on my desk. Now, I put together a fairly decent selection, and I kind of based it on case sizes and case shapes. So a little bit about the brand. Richard Mille is just a little bit over 10 years old. Someone that has accomplished something that is truly, truly amazing, and that is to take a brand from 0 to 100 miles an hour in just a little bit over 10 years. Everybody loves his watches. The prices on his watches are outrageous. You're talking about a standard daytime watch, like an RM10, that starts retailing at $70,000. And you think that's a chronograph is over $100,000. And don't let me talk about the tourbillons. Any tourbillon out there that he makes is at least $500,000 and up. And let's not forget to mention the $2 million crystal tourbillons and the special McLaren tourbillons that are $1 million. Lady sapphire pieces that are $1 million. This guy is a no holds bar, in your face, and the discussion brand. Now the resale value on these pieces is ridiculous just the same. Why? Supply and demand. This guy makes so very, very few watches that today, if you wanted to get the latest RM11 version 03, you have to get in line, wait 2 months, and pay full retail at the boutiques. Nor I or anybody else out there can get you the new RM11 models at anything off retail. If anything, you're going to pay a little bit over retail if you want that watch today. And the way that happens, somebody actually buys it at the boutique, pays full pop for the watch, and resells it to you and marks it up $5,000 to $10,000. So for example, if RM1103 retails for $130,000 today in rose and titanium, you expect to pay $135 to $140 if you want it today. So as usual, I'm not going to get into the nuts and bolts of these watches. I'm simply going to show you a few of the different variations that Richard Mille makes. I'm going to start with the RM11. So the RM11 is the most recognizable and the most popular case shape that Richard Mille makes. It's the classic tonneau shape of a Richard Mille. This is a special edition. This happens to be called the last edition. Since RM11 came out in the V3 or version 3, technically this is the last edition, even though they made a few variations of these, and this is a limited edition of 30 pieces. Now I'm going to go down and scale down to an RM10. Now RM10, again, has the classic tonneau shape. Again, this one happens to be a limited edition of 30 pieces, and I'll talk about how Richard Mille makes a lot of limited editions. And again, this watch shows you the hour, the minutes, the seconds, and a date, and a retail value of $70,000. Pretty crazy, right? The last tonneau variation I want to show you is a limited edition Bubba Watson. Now what this is, this happens to be made for the Asian boutique. Again, limited edition of 30 pieces. You can see right through the watch. This is a gorgeous, gorgeous watch. Super popular. They made many variations of it. This particular one is one of the latest. I'm absolutely in love with the blue and white combo. Now the difference between this one and the RM10 and the RM11 is that this has the case size of an RM11, but it's not a chronograph. I'm just going to put the two side by side so you can see the difference. Same size, no chronograph, and a less busy dial, obviously. So the tonneau shaped pieces from Richard Mille are Richard Mille. This is what defines Richard Mille. You tell anybody Richard Mille, the first thing they're going to think of is a tonneau shaped watch, whether it's a chronograph, whether it's a limited edition Bubba Watson or a Rafael Nadal or an RM10 that's plain. This is what Richard Mille screams, but this is not all that Richard Mille makes. Richard Mille also makes round watches just the same. Now, not as popular as the tonneau shaped pieces, however, they still have a decent demand out there for them, but you can pick these up at a slightly higher discount than the other guys. I'm going to start with the RM28 because this was the first round piece that Richard Mille makes. Now what this is a diver's watch. You can actually go diving in this watch. This watch is water resistant to 300 meters. Now personally, I'm not going to dive that deep, but if you choose to do so, to each his own. Again, plain Jane watch, hours, minutes, and date. Retail price, $145,000. Its titanium counterpart retails for around $100,000. Next is a relative newcomer. This is the RM63, aka Dizzy Hands. They call it the Dizzy Hand for obvious reasons. If you look at the dial, you see the numbers are kind of all over the place, hence making you dizzy. Automatic, rose gold and titanium. Now Richard Mille is infamous for doing rose gold case with combination of titanium to take the weight down. So you can see the metal part is actually made out of titanium. Retail price on this piece, $117,500. Wow. Again, shows you the hours and the minutes. Doesn't even show you the dates. Gives you these crazy hour markers, AKA dizzy markers. 117,000. Another thing that Richard Mille did was he came out with these extra flat watches. He started with the RM16, and hopefully you can see how flat this piece is. So this is the RM16. Again, this is a limited edition. They made 30 of these, the all black. You can see through the movement. It is a skeleton, and look how flat this piece is. That's just crazy. What's the retail price on this watch? That again only shows the time in the minutes. $105,000. Wow. Now this next piece, which is the RM33, is also a fairly newcomer. It came out after the RM16, but it is also part of that quote-unquote flat series. You can see it here, but it is a round shape. Now let me give you a close-up. So this is the RM33, rose gold. Again, very flat case. It is an automatic skeleton. Basically a round version of RM16. And this retails for $113,000. Not bad. Again, the watch only shows you the hours and the minutes. Doesn't even have a date. Now that I ran through all the different versions of Richard Mille's, let me tell you about why these things are so expensive and why they hold their value really well. My first Richard Mille that I saw was actually an RM005 Felipe Massa. They did a contract with Felipe Massa where he became the spokesman for them. And they made a limited edition 005 in titanium and in platinum. Back then, the retail on those pieces weren't that high because Richard Mille hasn't gone up with his retail prices just yet. And it was a relative newcomer. Some people liked it. People liked the gimmick, the fact that it was a Felipe Massa watch. And I sold a few. The platinum sold for about $50,000. I believe I sold the titanium for around $20,000. And I sold maybe 2 or 3 of those. Never really paid much attention to it back then. Then they came out with the RM11, which was their chronograph. It was titanium, rose gold, and white gold. At the time, the retail price on those pieces was somewhere around $70,000 to $80,000, depending on the metal. One of the things that Richard Mille did well, which I absolutely loved, is he didn't differentiate much between the metals. So you didn't have a scenario where a titanium watch, let's say, was $5, and then the rose gold was $8. The difference between the rose and the titanium was very, very minimal, which I absolutely love because you're paying for the watch, not the metal. There's no watch out there that's in gold that can justify its price tag based on the metal weight, so it doesn't really matter. The RM11, my very first RM11s, I remember selling them for around $50,000, $45,000, all the way up to $65,000. And I'll be honest with you, I wish I had those watches back. The original RM11 in any metal today will set you back at least 100 grand. So slowly but surely, the popularity of Richard Mille started climbing. And it started climbing due to some of the complicated pieces that he makes. Again, not getting into the nuts and bolts. If you go to his website and you look at some of the tourbillon that this guy makes, they're horological marvels. Some of the stuff that he does within his movements is absolutely amazing, ridiculous. It cannot be repeated by anyone. The material that he uses for his watches is absolutely avant-garde, never been used. Again, not going to give you too many details on that. You can always read that stuff online. Fast forward a few years, the popularity of the brand went up. Richard Mille decided to do something that has never been done in the watch industry. The guy decides, I am going to raise my retail prices 40% in 1 year. When we heard about this, we're like, what is this guy doing? Is he shooting himself in the foot? The brand has taken off. He's doing a good job. He's going to kill himself by doing that. Not so. That 1 year, he raised his retail prices by 40% and cut his production by about 70%. What was he doing? Creating a supply and demand situation. He saw his watches were taking off. He saw that they were popular. And he said, you know what? I'm going to make a whole lot less and I'm going to sell them for a whole lot more. Did it work? Absolutely, it did. You got chronographs that went from a retail price of $70,000 to $110,000, $120,000, $130,000. And all of a sudden, that one trick got him so much attention and so much publicity that every watch collector and every watch nut out there started paying attention to the brand Richard Mille. Who does this guy think he is? And what the hell is he doing? Well, lo and behold, fast forward to today. Richard Mille mainly makes all of his pieces in a limited edition or a limited production. By limited edition, for the most part, all the Bubba Watsons, they're made in 30, maybe to 15. There was maybe one edition there were 100 of, and you cannot get them. This watch retails for around $120,000 depending on the variation. You know how much this sells for? $110,000. Not a hell of a discount on a watch like that. This watch retails for around $160,000, again, depending on the variation. You know how much it sells for? $160,000, and you'll be lucky to find one. So yeah, no discount on this piece. And just to put it in perspective, here's an Audemars Piguet Concept GMT, a watch that retails for $215,000 that you can pick up for the same amount of money as this Richard Mille. Now ask yourself a question, which would you rather have? A GMT Concept Tourbillon or a Richard Mille chronograph for $160,000? Now the round stop was not such a big hit as the tonneau shape pieces. Why? Well, it's kind of like the Frank Mueller story. If you remember, if you think of Frank Mueller, the first thing you think of is a tonneau shape watch. A while back, Frank Mueller did try to make square pieces, he tried to make round pieces, and most of them were a flop. And the reason they were a flop is because when you think Frank Mueller, you think tonneau shape watches. Same goes for Richard Mille. However, the round pieces were not as big of a flop as, let's say, Frank Mueller's round watches was, simply due to the popularity of the brand overall. The brand is so popular that it can even carry the not so popular pieces to where you're still going to be hard pressed to pick this up cheaper than 30 to 40% off on the secondary market. Of course, same goes for the RM33 and the RM63. Again, round pieces, not as popular as the no shape pieces, but the discount is still not there. If you're lucky, you'll pick these up at 30 to 35% off. So no huge deals on these. The RM10, probably the second most popular version of Richard Mille. Why? Because this is the one that's somewhat affordable. The retail prices on these things started around 70 to 80 to 90,000, depending on the metal and the variation, or some limited edition. To be honest with you, I don't even know which limited edition this is at this point. I lost track. However, it's still a super popular watch because it's relatively more affordable. You can pick up an RM10 on the secondary market today, and you wear from $50 to $60, sometimes $70,000, depending on the version and the metal. So what's the big deal about these Richard Milles? Now, I get to talk to collectors, customers, dealers, and everybody that's in the watch industry. And whenever the topic of Richard Mille comes up, two questions are being asked. Is this the next bubble like Patek Philippe was prior to 2008? And why do people want to pay $100,000 plus to put a chronograph on their wrist? Well, the answer is pretty simple. Anyone that has a Richard Mille on their wrist, everybody around them knows that you have at least $100,000 on your wrist. They also know that you're someone that can spend $100,000 on something that's just like a chronograph. Most people, if they spend $100 grand, they want a complicated watch, a perpetual calendar, Patek Philippe, or a tourbillon from Audemars, and so on and so forth. Well, this is a watch for those people that just don't give a shit. They want to say, hey, I got you money. I'm going to put a chronograph on my wrist, and I'm going to spend over $100,000 on it. Now let's talk about the bubble question. Is Richard Mille another bubble? If you remember back in 2007, leading up to the financial crisis, Patek Philippe prices were through the roof, and so were vintage Rolexes. And guess what? When the crisis hit, the bubble burst. I don't think Richard Mille is going to have the same faith, and I'll tell you why. Richard Mille is super, super smart in regards to their distribution and in regards to amount of pieces that they make. The way I, as a secondary market dealer, tell if something is a bubble or not is depending on the amount of goods that are out there. Outside of doing retail sales, my company also does wholesale. So when I'm at a trade show, I pay close attention to what's in other people's showcases and other dealers' showcases. If I walk around the room and I see 15 Richard Milles in everybody's cases, I know there's an issue, because what's happening? They're being traded dealer to dealer, and they're not ending up on customers' wrists. When that happens, that's when a bubble happens. Well, I'll tell you like this. If you walk into any trade show that I attend, and I attend about 20 a year, from New York all the way out to Hong Kong, you'll be hard-pressed to find 20 Richard Milles in an entire room of 250 plus dealers. Why? Supply and demand. Richard Mille controls his supply so well and produces so very little pieces that they don't end up sitting around other dealer showcases. They sell and they make it onto customers' wrists. And on top of that, the customers, they buy them, they love them so much that they don't resell them. So therefore, they don't show up back on a secondary market pre-owned either. So in conclusion, so long as Richard Mille continues doing what he's doing in terms of his supply, in terms of making avant-garde pieces and beautiful watches, there will be no bubble. They will only continue climbing up in price and ending up on customers' wrists. So I hope you enjoyed a little insight on the world of Richard Mille from me today. If you like this video, hit the like button. If you're not subscribed to my channel, hit the subscribe button, and I'll see you next time for more watch reviews and other videos. Till next time.